And I was wondering, I know that you talk about something in your work called the worst day cycle. I would
Yeah,
love if we could learn a little bit more about that and if that cycle is at all tied to abandonment and betrayal.
it's completely tied to it. It's something, I discovered it's kind of born out of what, was developed almost 100 years ago, something called the repetition compulsion, but they could never really solve exactly how it works. And, I think I've done that. And what the worst day cycle contains four things: trauma, fear, shame, and denial. I wrote a whole book on it, so it's kind of an in-depth process, but I'll try and shrink it down a little bit. The first stage is trauma. Every single one of us goes through childhood trauma. It's unavoidable. We're human, we're limited. Every parent makes mistakes. No parent, well, virtually no parent has ever taken a class on parenting. That doesn't make them bad people, but our society just doesn't, make it something that we feel is important. And so everyone's doing the best they can, but it's think of it. It's like asking somebody to build a space shuttle without being an aeronautical engineer. They have an idea where some of the pieces go because they've seen what a space shuttle looks like, but they're going to make some mistakes and can't fine tune everything because they're just missing some of the skills and tools. And so because of that, all of us have been wounded in childhood, and that wounding that happens, which can be, what people think of as severe or something just simple like parents rolling their eyes or not a divorce or not being, being a latchkey kid because a parent had to work, they're a single parent. Those create abandonment wounds or traumatic wounds of various degrees. Well, when that happens, the brain and body changes and it induces fear. And that becomes an emotional chemical addiction within the brain and body. Because of the way our brain works, our brain doesn't know the difference between something that's good or bad, right or wrong. All it cares about is what it's experienced in the past, and it tries to repeat it, whether it's good or not. And so, because of that, our brain and body gets addicted to repeating the trauma that we experienced. And so, when we feel that trauma and fear, that creates the shame reaction, which is the loss of our inherent value and worth. And the shame aspect is very complex. Two things, we need two things as a species. The first thing is attachment. We must emotionally and physically attach to another human being or we'll die. The second thing we need is the pursuit of our authenticity, which you can think of as our ability to decide who we want to be, make our own choices, our inherent power and who we're going to be. Well, think of a child. They're at the mercy of mom and dad because their survival depends on it. And so when parents make mistakes, a child has a choice. I will die without attachment. I can live without my authentic self and pursuing who I really am. So that gets dropped. But the inability to pursue their authentic self creates a shame of, wait a minute, because mom and dad are perfectly imperfect and they made a mistake. If I become who I want, I'm going to break the rules. I'll lose attachment. So I'm going to drop who I am. And that's the loss of our inherent value and worth. And because we have to get that attachment. And so we develop shame-based false personas, beliefs about ourselves, reactions to situate people, places, and things that we think are our authentic self, but it's not. It's a loss of self. But most of this happens in the first 7 years of life. Well, in the first 7 years of life, we're in a theta brainwave state, which is the exact same as hypnosis. So we're not even present in our life. We're just downloading the emotional condition of our parents. And so when most of our brains come online, we had figured out a coping mechanism to create attachment. We think this is the person that we are, but it's all adaptive. It's not our authentic self. And that truth is so overwhelming, and our brains are so underdeveloped, both intellectually and emotionally, that it sends us into denial. It's the only way we can survive it is to deny the truth of our parents' imperfections and the ways they did abandon us or hurt us or whatever. We have to justify it, condone it, suppress it, repress it, minimize it, make it okay. Because remember, we need attachment to survive. Well, the problem is that becomes a repetitive cycle of every moment in childhood. We have a choice. Do I pursue my authentic self or attachment? Well, we keep dropping who we really are. So we get into adulthood, and what people don't realize is your career will tell me about your childhood trauma. So, for instance, a realtor, they grew up in a very chaotic home. They either moved a lot, they were an army brat, but there was no stability at home. And that's the process of buying and selling homes. So now, remember, authenticity is our inherent power. We had to drop it. So as an adult, this sounds really crazy, but we all, in every relationship, every career, every choice we make, we choose to re-victimize ourselves, to put ourselves back in the exact same position because we're trying to reconcile how we had to give up our authenticity for attachment. But because we don't teach about these things, people don't know, if you ended up with a narcissist, that tells me about your parents. And, if you're codependent, all of these different things, whatever career it is, all you're doing is repeating that pain against yourself because at least it gives you a sense of power. Because now you're an adult, you can choose it. Now, it's not that we consciously want to choose to victimize ourselves, but remember, our society hasn't taught about these things. The first book on psychology wasn't written until the 1870s. Then you had Freud and some others in the early 1900s. But it wasn't until the 1970s with Oprah, Phil Donahue, all the reality TV talk shows, where as a society, we started talking about childhood, relationships, emotions, trauma. So as a species, we're literally about 50 years in to discovering the most important aspects of life. So you can equate that, intellectual or emotionally, as far as relationships, parenting, and emotional development. As a species, it's like we haven't discovered that the earth isn't flat or how to build tools or fire. We're that new in the process of learning about all these things. We're all doing the best we can with the information we have, but your age group and society is starting to be more open to all of these things. And so we're starting to discover, oh my God, this is how it works. And this is what we all do. So it doesn't matter, like, one thing people have mistaken is they think there's something normal or somebody who, is successful, whether it's a politician, actress, athlete, business person, that they're normal and okay. Well, all of those are adaptations as well. Normal is all of us are hurt and all of us are stuck in the cycle and we all live it out in our own individual way. That's what normal is. There isn't anybody on this planet who's escaped childhood without this cycle. And so in 3 questions, you could bring anyone you wanted to me. And in 3 questions, I could show you how they're all stuck in the cycle. It's everybody, no matter how successful or unsuccessful a person is. Again, I want to make it clear, because of the shame and denial portion, many people hearing this will instantly feel, oh my God, he's saying I'm bad. Oh my God, he's saying there's something wrong with me. Well, that is proof of the cycle, because all emotions are learned in childhood. We're not born with them. And so because of the shame-based messaging, or whether it was either direct message of parents disparaging their child, or because life was crazy and busy and they couldn't meet the child's needs. So either directly or indirectly, we feel that loss of worth. And so when people hear me talk about the worst day cycle, if they're not familiar with my work, most will instantly feel a sense that they're bad or wrong and they're defective. That's proof of the cycle, because every single one of us is born with inherent value and worth. But because of this attachment authenticity bind, we lose that. And so anyone having a reaction to what I just described and feeling like, there's anything bad or wrong about them, that shows that, okay, well, now we're into truth because I teach four things: truth, responsibility, healing, and forgiveness. So now we're into truth that all of us are perfectly imperfect and have been through pain. The next step is we take responsibility and put a plan in place to learn about it, gather the knowledge, skills, and tools that we weren't taught. And we do that by doing the healing work. And from that place, we can forgive not only our caregivers, but ourselves for how we chose people, places, and things as adults that worked against us, not for us. So that's a really, that's about as short as I can make an explanation. I hope it gave you enough clarity on how it all works.